Should people be judged on the color of their skin or the content of their character? That was the question Martin Luther King Jr. was asking, and we're going to wrestle with it today on this special episode of Family Vision. Rob Rienow here with Visionary Family Ministries. How can we talk to our kids and grandkids about the issue of race and racism? Today, I'm going to continue my interview with Samuel Sey. Samuel is a Christian thinker. He is a writer. He has an online ministry as a cultural commentator. You can find him at slowtowrite.com. Now, if you missed part one of my conversation with Samuel, I want you to push pause here and go back and watch that first episode. We talked about why racial tensions are on the rise in our culture today. We talked about the relationship between evolution and race wars. They go together. One of the most important things we talked about in our first conversation was the essential biblical teaching that there is only one race. Even this whole idea that there are multiple races comes from an evolutionary, secular, even atheistic mindset. The Bible teaches there's only one race. We're all human. We're all made in the image of God. And so we share equal value, worth, and dignity. Here in part two, I've got some controversial questions that I want to pose to Samuel. And then we're going to focus on how parents can have biblically driven conversations with our kids. How can we help our kids and grandkids have the mind of Christ and shine for Him in this dark world? So here we go, part two with Samuel Sey. Okay, Samuel, I want to continue our conversation. I've got a couple more cultural questions for you, and then I want to get to specifically how we can help parents and grandparents have these conversations with their children and grandchildren. I want to ask you big picture, and I know this is painting with a broad brush. How do you think the evangelical church is doing right now addressing issues of racial tension and ethnicity in this whole conversation we're having? What areas maybe would you give the evangelical church a good grade and maybe others where might not be so good?
Well, I always want to be careful. I know you would agree with this too, about how I talk about the church, because I don't want anyone speaking about my wife in a very callous manner. I wouldn't be very pleased about that. So in the same way, when I talk about the church, I'm talking about the bride of Christ, and I want to honor Christ by honoring His bride. But obviously, Christ Himself has talked about some of the sins that His bride can be tempted to commit, including, of course, that I am part of that bride. I am part of the church. I say all that because the church is the light of the world by the grace of God. The church is the salt of the earth. So there's nobody better in the world in addressing the issue of race. People want to attack the church as being this white supremacist institution, which is ridiculous. We are the light of the world when it comes to the issue of addressing racism and white supremacy or any kind of partiality. There's no one better than the church. And when I say the church, I just mean, of course, all Christians. Nevertheless, we are still a sinful church. We are a sinful bride. And just as in the past, we failed in some aspects when it came to the issue of white supremacy or racism, we are doing a very similar thing now, where in the past you had people like Wilberforce, who ended slavery in Britain or the British Empire, but he also had to be fighting against other professing Christians on these issues. And it's a similar thing happening today, where you have so many people in the church who are fighting critical race theory and fighting racism against white people or anybody. But yet, unfortunately, you have a lot of people who are also similar to the Christians who were supporting white supremacy in the past, who are also following the culture today. And what's interesting is oftentimes these pastors who will embrace critical race theory or, this woke thinking on race, they will oftentimes cite church history. They'll say, well, look, I don't want to be like my forefathers who embraced white supremacy in the past. So this time I am going to embrace critical race theory. But the irony is they're actually embracing the same thing their forefathers did by embracing critical race theory. Because a lot of Christians embraced white supremacy in the past, not because of the Bible, but because of the culture at the time, right? Because of Darwinism at the time. And in a similar way, these critical race theorists are embracing the new kind of social Darwinism. So it's just, it's this satanic deception that is making some of these pastors think they're doing good, but really they're doing evil. So to answer your question, I would say that there are many who are doing well, but sadly, there are many who have bowed to the culture. There are many who, out of fear, out of ignorance, out of deception, are following the satanic view on race.
Samuel, that is such a great insight. Again, another huge learning for me, something I never thought of, that the white supremacists of the 18th century were, even those in the church, were being sucked in with the demonic culture, and the critical race theorists in the church today, even though they're touting themselves, right, as righteous and holy, are actually the same thing. They're just being sucked in and going along. They've been taken captive by the demonic culture. I think that's an incredible insight. One more cultural, sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry, if I could just add to that, because we forget the shame that people would receive, including Wilberforce, if they were against the slave trade. It was so common, and think about it, slavery has been so common, not just in America or Britain, but throughout every place in history, every culture.
The whole world for thousands of years, right?
Exactly. So you were an anomaly if you were against slave trade, and especially if you were to say, look, because of our faith in Christ, because of our belief in all of us being made in the image of God, we should reject slavery. You were shunned for that. So it's very similar to what is happening now, where if you say, no, guys, look, I love Black people, I love all people, but critical race theory is wrong, when everywhere in the culture, in schools, in many churches, in politics, in media, everywhere it's being promoted, it's difficult not to embrace it, right? But of course, we fear God, not man. And sadly, again, so many people, whether it's with white supremacy in the past or critical race theory today, so many people choose to fear man over God.
Amen. I believe you talk to many Christians who would say, well, of course, if I was in the church in 1840 or 1850, I would be preaching and proclaiming against slavery. I think one of the litmus tests for a Christian who says that is, are you now preaching and proclaiming against the evil of abortion? And if you are not now standing up against the evil of abortion in the culture, what makes you think you would have stood up then against the evil of slavery in the culture? I think there's a similarity there. Let me ask you another question. We just celebrated Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday, and I have found it fascinating that his teaching, especially in the last 10 years, has really come under fire from, I'm going to call it the woke mob. Perhaps the most famous line of his I Have a Dream speech is when he says that he dreams of a world where his 4 children will not be judged. They'll live in a nation where they'll not be judged by the color of their skin, but the content of their character. I completely agree with that dream, that vision, that no one should be judged based on the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. But why does that quote right now in particular get so many people fired up and furious? Why do they just seem to reject it outright?
I love that question, because people forget this about Martin Luther King Jr. Shortly before he died, he was actually hated by the woke mob of that time. He was being called an Uncle Tom and a coon, the same way people like myself would be called today at that time. You had Martin Luther King Jr. was a Marxist himself too, sadly, but you had other people who were significantly more radical than he was. And I do appreciate, obviously his work on the civil rights issue. He was fantastic. Nevertheless, there are people who wanted him to be more radical, and he wasn't. He recognized that he had to work with white people to achieve justice against segregation. But I mention this because there were Marxists at the time. You had the Black Panthers at the time who hated Martin Luther King Jr. because he was not a radical. And in that speech, in that I Have a Dream speech, he actually addresses them. Not explicitly, but he does. He says, look, now there are people within the Black community who, out of bitterness, are essentially repaying evil for evil. And he speaks out against them. So even at that time, he was unpopular with some people. But since then, of course, more people have become even more radical, including, of course, critical race theorists. In his book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, when I think the better title is How to Be a Racist, the most popular critical race theorist today is a man named Ibram X. Kendi. And in the beginning of this book, he talks about how much he used to look up to and love Martin Luther King Jr. But then when he got older, he realized, there are better leaders out there than Martin Luther King Jr. And he essentially, in many ways, referred to him as a sellout, as an Uncle Tom. And in his book, and this is not by accident, in his book, Ibram Kendi says, real anti-racism, real racial equity is to discriminate against white people. This is almost word for word what he says in his book. So they say that because they believe in equity, they believe in racial equity or equality of outcome. And they say, this is actually what he says exactly, that the remedy for past discrimination is future discrimination. He's referring to white people, since many white people were discriminated against Black people, that they should also now receive the same treatment. So they really do believe in judging people based on their skin color. That's why another critical race theorist named Robin DiAngelo said, a positive white identity is an impossible goal. They say it's impossible. If you're a white person, you are an oppressor. You are a racist. You are morally inferior to others. Therefore, you need to be oppressed. You need to be discriminated against. That's what they sincerely believe. So that's why then MLK's views on judging people based on their character, not their color of skin, has become less and less popular amongst many people today because of how they see that view, that so-called colorblind thinking is unhelpful to their agenda.
Wow. Okay. All right. Well, that helps me to unpack why I've seen that trend. Let's talk about how parents can have biblical Christian equipping conversations with their kids on these issues. First, do you have any suggestions for how parents can teach this biblical base that there's only one race and that every single person should be treated with equal value, worth, and dignity? Any thoughts for just a 101 for parents on that?
Yeah, it's a quick thought on that. I'm actually working on a curriculum to help parents on that very thing right now. But it really just begins with the scriptures. Everything I'm saying is not because I'm studying all these. Of course, I'm studying a lot of books too, but primarily I know these issues because I'm reading the Bible and I'm studying the Bible. So I think starting off by reading Genesis, where it talks about creation, by reading what the Bible says, throughout the entire Bible about humanity, what it means to be the image of God, that we are all fearfully and wonderfully made. And then at a very basic level, explaining to children that, look, there is sin in this world. There is a reality that people are going to sin. But racism, right? Racism is really just partiality against people based on their skin color. That's very important, right? That as society, we make racism this unique sin. It's not unique. It's just partiality. If I show partiality against someone because of the color of their hair or because of the work they do, for any reason whatsoever, it is no different than the real issue of sin when it comes to racism, and it's just partiality. So it's really by reading the scriptures, and it's really by believing the scriptures, and then just sharing these simple truths to your children or your grandchildren.
That's so great. Another big learning from me. I would not have thought to go to the command, do not show partiality, which we have in the New Testament, and then principially multiple places as a key starting point for this. So that's great. All right. I want to give you a case study here, and this probably has a few tentacles to it. your child comes home from school, or you're just driving around town, or you're just watching TV, and they see the Black Lives Matter sign. And I'm talking about like the official logo of the organization sign, you know, the one I mean. And they say, Mom, my teacher put this up in our class. Mom, our neighbor has this in their yard. Mom, I saw that on TV. What does that sign mean? How are you going to unpack that? How can a mom unpack that for their child?
Mm-hmm. Before I answer that question, you know, I always say this: Black Lives Matter is the most cunning phrase in the history probably of civilization. So what I would say to my child is going back to the scriptures. And I would say, look, remember what the Bible says, that Satan sometimes appears as an angel of light, right? In that he knows that if Satan just comes out as a devil, as a demon, you will know right away that he is evil. But he will appear sometimes as an angel of light to deceive you. And I would say that the Black Lives Matter sign is cunning. It is deceptive, in that they don't really believe that Black Lives Matter. Because if they did, they would affirm what the Bible says about what it means to be made in the image of God, what it means that all of us are fearfully, wonderfully made. If they really believe that, they would not support abortion, which kills primarily a lot of babies, a lot of Black babies, I should say. There have been 20 million Black babies killed since Roe v. Wade was ruled. I praise God that it's been overturned. But I would say to the child that, look, Black lives, of course, do matter, right? But I reject that phrase because the Bible says that better. That again, we are all fearfully and wonderfully made. God's words are not weaker than man's. Especially when you say Black Lives Matter, we know they're not being honest and that it's excluding other people. So that's why when you say all lives matter, they get so upset. So that's what I would say to my child.
Okay, I need you to expand on something you just said. The phrase Black Lives Matter on its surface would be affirmed by every Christian, of course. The phrase all lives matter in the same way on its surface would be affirmed by every Christian. Why does the phrase all lives matter seem to make so many people so furious? And if you say all lives matter, you actually get accused of being a hateful, bigoted racist, even though you just said all lives matter. So how do you help? I mean, we've got teenagers that are all twisted up on this. How do you help a teenager unpack what just happened to them?
Mm-hmm. I would say it's, as I mentioned before, critical race theory, or the woke mob today, the Black Lives Matter proponents, they do believe in discriminating against white people to help Black people. That's their view. So for that reason, when you say all lives matter, it goes against their view. They don't believe all lives matter. They believe that some lives matter more than others. Wow. They, in the same way that white supremacy says that white people are superior than Black people, the woke mob, critical race theory, they say that Black people are morally superior than white people, right? So, I mean, and this is not me just making it up. So there is one of the Black Lives Matter founders in Toronto. She said that that because of Black people's melanin, white people are subhuman, that they are less valuable than Black people. That's what they believe. So when you say all lives matter, they say no. Black lives matter. Now they will say that they're saying that because society excludes Black people. They will claim that's why they're saying that. But then when they're being more candid, they have been shown to say that no, we're saying that Black lives are more valuable than other lives. That's why they hate all lives matter.
Wow. And it seems pretty obvious that Black lives such as Clarence Thomas or Ben Carson or Samuel Sey or Black babies in the womb, those Black lives don't seem to matter very much from what I see in the headlines.
Absolutely. And even the the George Floyds, even the Black men who have been justly or unjustly killed by cops, even their lives do not matter to them, because it's a fact. We know this, that while they've made so much money, as in Black Lives Matter, the organization, as they've made so much money from their protests and riots and everything, they've not helped out any of the families whatsoever. And on top of that, a lot of the riots that they've supported have actually destroyed a lot of Black communities. And so really, they don't really believe that any Black lives matters really besides their own pockets. So that's why I say that the organization or the slogan, the phrase is so cunning, because even me as a Black man, even before I explain why I don't support the organization or even the term because of what they really mean by that term, even I have to say, look, obviously I'm not saying Black lives don't matter. Even me as a Black man. And that's because, again, it's so brilliant as a phrase. It's so cunning that it traps people into thinking, well, how can I say anything against this organization when that phrase is so powerful?
Wow. Hey, Samuel, big thank you to you. I've learned a lot from this conversation. I knew I wanted to introduce you to the Family Vision community, but it really was with more selfish intent that I wanted to get this time with you, because I have these questions that I wanted to ask, and I appreciate your ministry. It's making a huge difference. Could you please tell everyone how they can follow you, stay in touch with you, and continue to learn from what you're sharing?
Thank you so much. They can find me at slowtowrite.com. That's where I write every week. They can also find me across social media platforms at slowtowrite as well. And then I'm about to actually work on a podcast soon too, so they can hopefully very soon find me in a few weeks. It's probably going to be slow to speak. It makes sense that I make the podcast slow to speak, so they can find me over there too very soon.
Samuel, that's great. Please keep me posted on this. You said you've got this curriculum coming out for parents, this podcast that's launching. We want to share that news as often as we can with the Family Vision community. And again, blessings to you and your new wife, and a big thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
Now, for all of you in the Pacific Northwest, I want to see you at the upcoming Visionary Family Conference at Calvary Chapel, Lake Stevens. That's in the Seattle area. It's February 25 and 26. Then March 18th, we have two events. I will be back in Seattle speaking at the Northwest Ministry Conference, and Amy and our daughter Lissy are going to be offering a special event here in the Chicago area for moms and daughters. It's called Mother-Daughter Connect. It's on a Saturday morning at Wheaton Academy in West Chicago, March 18th, 9 to 10:30 a.m. A special experience for moms and daughters to come together, learn how to grow in your relationship with each other and in your faith. And again, that's going to be at Wheaton Academy on Saturday morning, March 18th. Get all the information about our events, registration, events coming to your area of the country at visionaryfam.com/events. Also, we have a resource that connects with some of these worldview issues that I've been talking about with Samuel. And that resource is called Reclaiming the Sufficiency of Scripture. One of the big areas in my own theology that was weak for so many years is that I believed that the Bible was true. I believed that the Bible was inerrant, but I didn't understand that it was enough. I didn't understand that it was sufficient for every matter of faith and practice. And you can get this resource, Reclaiming the Sufficiency of Scripture, at our website, visionaryfam.com, or wherever you buy your books. As always, we want to hear from you. Email us with your questions, your feedback, your responses, your prayer needs for your family at podcast@visionaryfam.com. And I'm already looking forward to our next time with you on Family Vision. It means so much to us to have you be a part of the Family Vision community. If this episode was meaningful for you, would you share it with a friend, with a family member? You can actually partner with us to bring hope and help to families around the world.
We are praying that Family Vision is a blessing to you and your family. So thank you for joining us here.
We look forward to our next time together.